Hi, my name is Jerry and I am the chainmail guy. Today I'm going to show you how to make a 3-can camp stove similar to a bush buddy or a solo stove, only family sized. We need 3 cans of 3 different diameters, an outer can, an inner can, and a pot stand can. The outer can is a 100 ounce or 2.84 liters. The inner can is a 1.05 liter. And the pot stand is a 1.36 liter. Now we start by centering the inner can on top of the outer can and marking the top of the outer can. Use a 7/8 inch step drill to drill 4 holes inside the marking, and then use the step drill to carve out the marked circle. Step drills are great for working with thin sheet metal like this since they leave a much cleaner edge than a jigsaw. And here's our hole in the top of the can. Next we strip off the label and make 8 marks around the can at the lowest crease. We drill these out to 7/8 of an inch to allow air to get to the inner can. Now we work on the inner can. Strip off the label and make 8 marks around the can at the lowest crease. The inner can has its hole at the top. Use a 1/2 inch step drill to drill the lower 8 intake holes. And there's the lower 8 intake holes. Use a jigsaw to cut the very top lip off of the inner can. This is going to be loud, so make sure you got your safety gear on. I step off camera for a moment to clean up the edges on the belt sander. Then mark 16 cuts from the top of the can to the first crease and cut them with tin snips. These will be the tabs that hold the inner can to the outer can. At 3 creases down, make 16 marks around the can for the upper air intake holes. Drill these out to 3/16 of an inch diameter. Again, a step drill makes this task much faster than with a standard drill bit set. The inner can now has all the holes and cuts that it needs. Slip it into the outer can to ensure a good fit and adjust the hole in the outer can if necessary. Bend the tabs out on the inner can, hammer them flat, and slip the inner can into the outer can from the top. Braze the tabs on the inner can to the top of the outer can. I'm using an oxyacetylene torch with a number 0 tip, and the gas pressures turned to about as low as they will go. Solder will not work in this case, as the temperatures in use will melt the solder. Be careful, the metal is thin, and even with a number 0 tip, you risk burning through the metal. Tack the tabs in place. Here you can see there are still gaps to be filled, and the tabs are not all sitting flat. When all the tabs are tacked, slip a piece of wood between the outer and inner cans and hammer the tabs flat. I used a piece of wood 3/4 inch by 1.5 inch, and it was a pretty snug fit. You can then finish up the brazing to close up all the spaces between the tabs and the outer can. Brazing rod that I used here is a flux-coated 3/32 inch diameter. And here's the finished firebox with the inner can brazed to the outer can, and all the tabs are sitting flat. Now we can set that aside and work on the pot stand. The pot stand should be tall enough to slip fuel into the firebox without removing the pot, and a little wider than the inner can on the firebox. If the tabs are cut short enough, the pot stand will store inside the base of the stove when not in use. Mark the crease 3 to 3.5 inches down from the open end of the can, and mark the crease 2 creases up from that. Mark 16 marks around the can between the 2 marked creases to show where the tab cuts will go. Mark a cutout on the can from the topmost crease to the lowest mark, making the cutout 4 tabs wide. This cutout will be the fuel feed hole. You can then use your step drill to cut out the fuel feed hole and the lowest marked crease. And then use tin snips to make the tab cuts. Then go back to the drill press and use the step drills to put breather holes in the pot stand. Over each odd cut at the topmost crease, mark a spot. Drill a 7/8 inch hole at these spots. Over each even cut, 2 creases up from the cut, mark a spot. Drill a 1/2 inch hole at these spots. Then bend the tabs out at a 90-degree angle, hammer the tabs flat, and your pot stand is done. And here's what the finished stove looks like with the pot stand on it. The inner can is a little shorter than the outer can, which means the hot inner can is insulated from the ground or picnic table it will be resting on. For added safety, place the lid of the large can under the stove to protect whatever flammable surface you're setting the stove on, to make sure that any embers that fall out of the stove don't land on flammable material. So let's fire this thing up. This type of stove is known as a top-load updraft gasification stove. It runs on kindling, pine cones, deadfall, corrugated cardboard, whatever flammable stuff you can find. The bottom holes in the inner can allow air into the burn chamber to release the volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, from the wood. The air gap between the outer and inner cans allows the heat at the bottom of the inner can to warm the air and enter the burn chamber at the top, burning the VOCs. The kettle in this shot contains a liter of water, enough to make a lunchtime tea for a couple of adults and lunchtime hot chocolate for a couple of kids. And we can see the kettle is boiling. Who's up for tea?